The Senate will come to order. Remaining under motions and resolutions, Senator Gazelka.
Mr. President, I move that pursuant to Rule 26, I designate the following bills be made for special orders for immediate consideration. Members, the sheet with the two bills is on your desk.
Members, the first bill up for consideration is number 4 on general orders, Senate File 9, Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is the Jobs and Economic Development Bill, members. We had it in Finance last night. We made several changes. We took out the incentive for OSB. We took out the Rondo project. We took out the refinery piece. And we added in some language for broadband. So, members, I encourage a yes vote on this. Mr. President, do you have the 813 amendment available? Okay. Mr. President, we'll have a technical amendment coming in just a minute.
Okay.
So I'll stand for questions.
I'm told that the A13 is on its way. We'll give it a few seconds to get here. Senator Pratt offers the A13 amendment. The Secretary will report the amendment.
Senator Pratt moves to amend Senate File number 9 as follows, page 31, line 24, delete. This is the A13 amendment.
To the amendment, Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. President. This clarifies the Commissioner must submit an application by the later of September 30th, 2021, or 90 days after the date of which Treasury begins accepting applications for capital projects. And then it also clarifies that of the amount awarded, 50% will be federal and 50% will be state. And Mr. President, I request a yes vote on the A13 amendment.
Discussion on the A13 amendment. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Motion prevails. The amendment is adopted. Further discussion on Senate File 9 as amended. Senator Bigham.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to offer the A12 amendment.
Senator Bigham offers the A12 amendment. The Secretary will report the amendment.
Senator Bigham moves to amend Senate File number 9 as follows, page 75, after line 26, insert. This is the A12 amendment.
To the amendment, Senator Bigham.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I'd like a roll call.
A roll call will be granted. To the amendment, Senator Bigham.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is the original amendment that 50 of us voted to support on Friday when this bill originally came through. And then 6 members who serve on the Finance Committee voted it out, and really taking our voice away. So that's the A12 amendment. Mr. President, I'm going to go ahead and offer the A11 amendment to the amendment.
Senator Bigham offers the A11 amendment to the amendment. The Secretary.
Okay.
The Secretary will report the amendment to the amendment.
Senator Bigham moves to amend Senate File number 9 as follows.
Amendment. Senator Bigham, I believe the A11 is just drafted as an amendment and not an amendment to the amendment. So if you would like to offer it as an amendment to the amendment, we'll have to get it redrafted. And we have plenty of time to do that. So if you'd like to go that route, we can certainly do that.
Mr. President, I'm going to go ahead and withdraw the A12 amendment.
Senator Bigham So just so everyone's clear, there is no amendment to the amendment in front of us. We're on the A12 amendment, and Senator Bigham is withdrawing the A12 amendment.
Miss-
Okay, so now we're on Senate File 9 as amended.
Yep.
Senator Bigham.
Thank you. I would now offer the A11 amendment.
Senator Bigham offers the A11 amendment. The Secretary will report the amendment.
Senator Bigham moves to amend Senate File Number 9 as follows, page 75 after line 26, insert. This is the A11 amendment.
To the A11, Senator Bigham.
Thank you. Mr. President, members, this came with conversations with Senator Rarick and nonpartisan staff last night. This addresses a lot of Senator Rarick's concerns about making sure we eliminate the paragraph on the original amendment from the definitions, and it creates a new subdivision line, and that subdivision line maps out the timeline for each of the thresholds, if you'll recall, in the bill. For compliance with the skilled and trained workforce requirements, similar to the old paragraph. And this, it keeps the effective date at October 15th, 2022. And I'm not going to pretend or mislead people here that Senator Rarick supports this bill, this amendment, being up at this time, because he doesn't. He made that clear last night. And so, members, I'm going to ask for a roll call.
Roll call will be granted.
Thank you. And a little bit of an update, and then we'll get to the vote. But Mr. President and members, yesterday, 200 plus workers at the refinery in St. Paul Park overwhelmingly voted down the last best offer by the company. And members, I want you to think about this. This has been 6 months they've been on the strike line, the picket line. They've been locked out. And they still voted it down because of their concern over workplace safety. So you hear the folks in the rotunda. I'm going to make, one more plea to members. 50 of us voted for this. 50. We can't get 50 of us to agree that today is Tuesday. So I really appreciate folks' support on this. Let's put 50 votes on it. The other body is going to be doing this later. Representative Franke, again, I spoke about him before. He's very concerned about this. Representative Lizgard and a bunch of other folks that care about worker safety are fired up over there as well. Members, we have opportunity to do this. Nowhere in here does it say you have to sign up for a union or it has to be a union apprenticeship program. So, folks, this is genuinely about worker safety. So please, be with workers and making sure that they can go home safe every night. And I'm going to say this. I was talking to my good friend, the senator from St. Paul, and this is a skilled program, and contractors always have requirements, just like nurses. If nurses from out of state come over, they have to have a certain level of training too. Members, this isn't a controversial bill. Let's not make this difficult. Let's be on the side of workers, and I would appreciate a green vote. Thank you.
Discussion on the A11 amendment. Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. President. And thank you, Senator Bigham, for bringing this amendment. And I see a number of changes that address the concerns that Senator Rarick raised. Members, I'm looking at this, and I still see some concerns with it. Look, we all care about workplace safety. We all care. I want to make sure that every one of these oil refinery workers goes home to their families every night. And I'm concerned about the host communities where they reside. I really, really am. But the fact of the matter is we have to do this right. One of the key values that we have in the Jobs Committee is to balance the needs of the employees and the employers, not to take one over the other. And Mr. President, Senator Rarick and I were presented with this language a week ago today We were wrapping up the bill. It wasn't in the conference committee report. We then, quite honestly, Senator Rarick put his credibility on the line and said he would work on it through the interim. And I'll tell you, I value Senator Rarick's credibility on this. He's absolutely 100%. We might hear that this becomes, we shouldn't let the perfect get in the way of the good. Members, I'm telling you, I don't even think we're at good yet. And if what we've seen with the wage theft bill is to say that, well, we'll go ahead and fix it later, we have a Commissioner of Labor that has stood in the way of making reasonable changes to wage theft after we allowed the good not to get in the way of the perfect. So, Mr. President, at this point in time, I would ask members to vote against the A11 amendment, and let's let Senator Rarick and his committee really focus on workplace safety.
Further discussion on the amendment. Senator Kent.
Thank you, Mr. President. When we talked about this before, when this bill passed, when this amendment passed off this floor with 75% of our members voting for it, I talked about the fact that this particular refinery that we're talking about in St. Paul Park is very close to my community. The school district that I share in the adjoining district with Senator Bigham has schools nearby. I went on the map and I looked at it. Newport Elementary is less than a mile away from this refinery. Nuevas Fronteras Spanish Immersion, where my son went to school, is a mile away. Altman Middle School is a mile away. That is close. This notion of, as Senator Pratt pointed out, what I said last night in finance, that we can't let perfect be the enemy of the good. When we're talking about community safety, worker safety, yeah, we can. Time matters. Doing something urgently matters. Saying, as we so often do in this place, and we know how it turns out almost every single time, yeah, we promise we'll work on it and we'll get to it early next session, is not good enough when we're talking about safety. So, members, we can put this language in this bill today. It will be there. It does not get enacted. It does not take effect for some time. We do have time to work on it over the session, but with it in there, everybody's held to account, and we have to. It's not just a promise. It is action that we are taking to keep our communities safe and to keep our workers safe. So, members, we absolutely should put this language in this bill today. I know there is going to be support for it in the other body, and Governor Walz has expressed his support about the urgency and the importance of doing this work for a long time now, as we all should have embraced over the past months. But here we are. We did the right thing on Friday. We should do the right thing again today. Support this amendment. Thank you.
Further discussion on the amendment. Senator Champion.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for the opportunity to speak briefly on my support for the Bigham Amendment. Mr. President, at the risk of regurgitating some of the things that have been stated already, I want to make sure that I don't do that and I stay as focused as possible. But I think it's important for us to elevate what has been said already. One is about safety, worker safety, community safety. That is paramount. And I think that this amendment addressed the concerns I heard in the Finance Committee yesterday by Senator Rarick. And so from that vantage point, I believe that Senator Bigham's amendment is responsible, is responsive, and is appropriate. The second thing that I would mention, and I'm not certain that this has changed, but the original amendment that was adopted by or passed off this floor included an enactment date of somewhere around October 22nd. And the significance of that is the fact that this is not a provision that would be enacted or implemented immediately. That means that there's time. There's something to be stated around time. Even though time is neutral, it is what we do within that time is what makes time important and significant. And here, Mr. President, I believe we have time for this placeholder and this amendment to be placed on this bill and for all the necessary parties who disagree with any aspect of the language, they can work on it, and they can work on it now. But we can put this amendment on now. And Mr. President, I know I use the term placeholder, not in any derogatory way or to demean the significance of putting this language in the bill, but in fact it is to reach back on a historical fact that I can attest to. As the chief author of the expungement bill, right now the current law for expungement is 609A, and if you look in that particular provision, you'll see when we're asked the question whether women or others and men who've been charged with a domestic issue, whether that is expungible. And there was some language put there. But that language, the advocates wasn't quite sure if it really captured everything they wanted it to capture. But we put the language there, and we put it there as a placeholder. In fact, in that language, it says in 609A is that if no changes are made by a given date, which would allow us to have the summer and then the upcoming legislative session, if no new language was passed, then this language would go forward. But it provided time. It provided an opportunity. But it was a placeholder in order to make sure that we acted expeditiously and that we didn't sit around with our hands just missing and us not working. But we needed to work. We needed to do something, especially if we wanted something to change under that bill. The other significant thing about this is that 50 members on this floor went forward and asked for the amendment or the language that we have now to go forward. Senator Marty said something yesterday, and I wanted to make sure I underscored it because it's appropriate based on the amendment that we have before us. I'm talking about the amendment that is before us. Is that when this language passed off the floor the other day, we had members from the Independent Caucus, the Republican Caucus, and the Democratic Caucus all work together and say this is language that we believe to be important. And so that's balance. That's bipartisanship. That's the way we are supposed to behave, and that is the way that we are supposed to act. If we do not accept it today and we allow what happened the other day to occur, which was for that amendment to be pulled off and now this new amendment for it not to be adopted, would send the wrong message to the community and also to employers. So it is for that reason I would hope that we all would support the Bigham Amendment because it is appropriate. It's something that we did before, and in fact, it is better because it addresses any concerns that was articulated by Senator Rarick. So thank you, members. Join me in supporting the Bigham Amendment.
Further discussion on the amendment, Senator Johnson-Stewart, followed by Senator Marty. Senator Johnson-Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in strong support of this amendment and stand firmly with my colleague, Senator Bigham, for worker safety. But more than that, I stand here and profess the need for human safety. We know that refinery work is the most hazardous of many of the industrial and construction trades. And we know that not just anybody can get in there and clean out a holding tank. The importance of skilled workers cannot be minimized. It absolutely cannot be minimized. And I know I can't turn around, but I would like to ask each one of my colleagues, who is going to look their mother, daughter, father, son, brother, sister, cousin, whoever it is, colleague, Carla lives, or Senator Bigham lives right there, if in fact we have an accident and it can be traced back to an unskilled worker. This is unbelievable that we even have to converse about the importance of skilled workers in such a critical area of our economy. I cannot believe it. So Senator Bigham said she's standing here with workers. I am standing here with children, with humans, with wildlife. The fact is, if we have an incident at a refinery, the plume will spread for 19 miles, and that's just based on average. It could spread further. I mentioned the other day, living in Superior, or outside of Superior, we waited for that cloud to come over us. Thankfully, it never did when we had the similar situation in Superior. But I want you to think about this. There is a law in the world, it's a physical law, that when we have an explosion, everything that exploded becomes part of the smoke. And that smoke is visible to us because it's full of particulates. And those particulates do not dissolve. And even if they did dissolve, they dissolve into the atmosphere, and they eventually will hit the ground again. So Mr. President, I'm looking at a map here. I know you represent the area south of Lake Pepin. Look forward to a nice scum of black silt on top of Lake Pepin if, in fact, we have an incident at one of Senator Bigham's refineries. I drew a circle 19 miles in radius, not diameter, 19 miles in radius from one of the refineries that we're talking about, and it covers many, many of us. I could say the list, but it would take up too much time. Nearly every suburb in the metro area. Luckily, it doesn't extend to me. So if this does in fact happen, please come out to my house. I live a little further than 19 miles from Senator Bigham's district, and I'll be happy to keep you all safe while you all figure out how to go back and face your constituents. So there is no way that I will vote for this jobs bill if this amendment is not included. I cannot believe that we're even having this argument. I cannot emphasize more the importance of skilled workers. I probably am one of the few people in this room that has stood next to a skilled operator, grateful that that person knows how to run the equipment. I have seen unskilled laborers jump into a bobcat and move it, and I've seen them fall into a trench. We do not want unskilled people cleaning out these tanks. We don't want them operating. We must have skilled workers, union or not union, that's not the issue here. This is important, and I don't want to be able to say I told you so. I need this amendment to pass for the safety of my own self and my colleagues. Please vote yes.
Further discussion on the amendment. Senator Marty, followed by Senator Port. Senator Marty.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have two concerns I want to raise, first of which is the procedural one. I've been here a good number of years, and I've seen a number of times where the Senate takes an action and then later reverses itself, usually with heavy pressure from leadership. Well, you didn't really want to vote for that. You're going to have to come in and reconsider a vote and get people to change their votes on it. I've seen the floor session often undo work of various committees. But I can't recall, and it may have happened, but it'd be extremely rare when we have a vote on the Senate floor, 3/4 of the members voting for it, and, well, let's take it back to committee and strip it out. We just don't do that. Of the 17 members who voted against Senator Bigham's amendment the other day, 6 of them had the votes to undo the work of 50 of us. It was 3-1 was the margin here. And 6 of the ones were able to undo that work, and that's troubling. I really believe once the Senate takes a position, the Senate itself should undo it, not a committee of the Senate. So that's a concern about process. The other concern, Senator Pratt said a few minutes ago that he said that we all care about worker safety, and I'm sure we all do. But here, for us in the Senate chamber, that's kind of an abstract concept. We're not the ones who are working with the toxic substances. We're not the ones who, if something goes wrong, we're not going home. We're not the ones risking our lives. And the workers at the refinery, they are. And they feel pretty strongly about it. Some of them may be here this morning, some of them may be contacting us. But if you want to know how strongly they feel about it, they went out on strike in January, and they've been locked out for 5 months. I don't know if you've ever been locked out for 5 months, but you got to have some economic fear about what's going to happen when you've been locked out that long and you have no income. And yet, as we're debating this week, they decided because of the lack of safety, they rejected the last offer. That means it matters to them. I'm sure every one of us cares about safety. I hope so. But the workers who are at risk, they care a whole lot more than we do. I urge you to put this back in the bill. The amendment that Senator Bigham offered the other day would have worked fine. The glitches in it weren't big glitches. They were some stylistic things, I'd argue, more than anything else. But it was something that 3/4 of us were persuaded to support. And for those workers who, after 5 months of being locked out, said, we're going to reject this anyway because of the safety, it's time to support them. I urge us to put this back in the bill.
Further discussion on the amendment. Senator Port, followed by Senator Bigham.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before I got elected, I did advocacy work. I spent time out in those halls with people from all across Minnesota and bringing their voices here to the Capitol to have them heard by their legislators. It's an important job, and it's important that we hear their voices. And this session, my first on this side of that door, their voices have been largely absent. The Capitol has been closed. The people of Minnesota have not been here with us. But the doors are open now to the People's House. And they are here. And we could hear them through the doors of this chamber. They are here telling us today what they need. They are here telling us they need us to put this provision back in. They are here standing with the 50 of us that voted for it last week. We can listen to the voices of the people of Minnesota because they are right there telling us what they need. We can hear them. We can put this provision back in. We can continue to work on it. Or we can turn our backs. We can close our ears and close our eyes and tell them it's not our job to fix this. I'm going to stand with the people of Minnesota. I think we all should stand with the people of Minnesota. They're here spending their time telling us what they need. We should support them. We should stand with them. I urge you to vote green.
Further discussion on the amendment. Senator Bigham, followed by Senator Rarick. Senator Bigham.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I appreciate all those speeches. And I just want to reiterate that this just isn't about what's going on presently in my district with the refinery. This is about years in the making with contractors and subcontractors being utilized, rightfully, for turnaround shutdowns. I'm not going to go into that again, but I just want people to understand that this just isn't about what's going on right now, which is abhorrent, but it's about the overall practice of turning down and shutting down a refinery, which is heavily used during that time by contractors and subcontractors. We should have a certain level, which is already, all these standards are already in place. So, and this amendment adopts changes that address Senator Rarick's concern. This is working with him. I introduced my bill in February, never received a hearing. Many stakeholders and workers asked for hearings. I did everything he asked. I met with the chamber. I did everything he asked. Now, I'm not in power here, so I can't compel folks to sit down together and work through this like he can, and like other people in this chamber can. So let's be on the sides of workers. Let's be on the sides of emergency workers that would have to respond, like my brother who's captain, who has 2 small sons. Well, one not too small. He's 12 and taller than me, but that's besides the point. And I don't want to have to go and tell them I could have done something. So join me. Let's do something, and let's protect these workers. Vote green.
Further discussion on the amendment. Senator Rarick, followed by Senator Gazelka. Senator Rarick.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, the A11 amendment in front of us does make some technical fixes to what we voted on Friday. But as I said on Friday, and I still believe today, that this amendment that is before us still needs work, and it needs to be vetted, and it needs to be worked through. I think on Friday, when we had 50 people vote for this amendment, it showed that we all believe that something can be done to address the safety at the two oil refineries. But looking through, again, last week, Tuesday evening was the first time we saw this language. We thought it was drafted better. We thought we could support it. Looking through it, today I cannot support it, but I have made the commitment since this came forward to continue to work on it, to continue to address it. Members, this is an issue that cannot happen in a couple of days or a couple of weeks or even a couple of months. I have taken on a number of big issues here at the Capitol since being elected, some of them working for 2 or 3 years to get it right. And that is what we owe the people of Minnesota, is to get this right. And when you look at the effective date of October 15th of 2022, that means we can engage with all the people this fall, get information in from all involved, from the communities, from the workers, from the facilities, and we can have their hearings, and we can get this, and we can get it right. And when we see the 50 votes that came out of this chamber on Friday, that shows there is a commitment here to do the right thing. This language isn't it, unfortunately. And even though I would love to vote yes on this, I cannot, and I would ask that members vote no and give me and Representative Eklund the ability to work on this and get this right so that we can actually get to what will make our refineries safer for the workers and the community. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further discussion on the amendment. Senator Gazelka.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I'm asking people to vote no on this bill, or this amendment, excuse me, and I want to explain why. And why did we have 50 people? I think Senator Rarick said it. Frankly, it's because we want the blue-collar trades to know that we care about them, but that this wasn't the right bill. And so people didn't, frankly, want to take a vote that people would misuse and pretend like some of the people on my side of the aisle, frankly, don't care deeply about the blue-collar trades. And this is my own journey for the last 7 or 8 years, having visited the Carpenters Union site where they train people to do their trade with skill, and the 49ers and pipe fitters and electrical contractors and a number of folks like those, that we've begun to build an important relationship. But so why am I not supportive of this? And in that journey, what I found is over the last number of years, frankly, whether you're talking about timber or taconite mining or oil pipelines and refineries or copper nickel mining, there's a growing movement of people that want to stop those industries. And you have to ask, well, who in the world's doing that? And if you don't know that, you'll just have to figure that one out. But I realize that, frankly, if we're going to defend those industries and all those jobs, the business community and the trades communities have to start working better together. So this doesn't mean I'm trying to change right to work. We're never going to change right to work. We're going to leave it as it is. We're not trying to change prevailing wage. But the other thing that I would say is the goal is to drive those two groups together to fight for the same jobs. But it's not to get in the middle of those groups and solve their fight, but rather make them work through the process that we've had for a long time, collective bargaining, and if that doesn't work, you have the ability to strike, and I support that process. What I don't support is that I decide to get right in the middle of that fight and choose one side over the other on an issue that they're supposed to work out in between them. So when we're talking about safety here, I totally agree. And we've been working on this issue. A number of senators here have been working on this issue related to how do we try to get these two sides together to work it out. I know Senator Miller, you have, and Senator Pratt, and Senator Rarick, and myself, and I'm sure others on the other side of the aisle. How do we get these guys to make it work? And so we have been, even after this amendment came up, we said, well, maybe we should do a study. Maybe we can do that for them. And frankly, some of those trades that I mentioned said we don't want to study because we think that we can work it out with the refinery. And we're going to keep pushing them towards that goal, members, but I've asked our members to vote no because I don't want to be in the middle of their fight. I want to help them fight the way they're supposed to fight and find an answer within that. The other thing I'll say, members, is there's another bill that we have accepted. Representative Frankie in the House had House File number 1482, the refinery safety bill, and for some reason the House was not offering that as a provision that we should accept in the end, so he called me. Nobody on this side of the aisle asked me to carry that bill and take that in negotiations, but we've accepted that refinery safety bill as something that is going to happen today or happen in the next week or so. So as we're moving forward with this, members, I'm asking you to vote no. I'm asking for the processes that we think are important, collective bargaining and strikes and working through that, to continue as we ask these groups to work together to fight for all the jobs, members, that I say are under fire. There is a group, the state Democratic Party, that has said, for example, on copper nickel mining, we don't want any of it. Think about how long it's taken to get that pipeline up north through. Who has stopped that? So I want to say that we are fighting for these blue-collar jobs. We just have a slightly different approach. And I would just ask the trades to think about who is fighting for these jobs and what is it we're trying to do. So vote no here, and then as we're moving forward, we'll keep working on trying to help these guys solve this.
Further discussion on the amendment. Senator Kent.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate what Senator Gazelka said in terms of trying to have everybody work together to come to some sort of resolution. And in the ideal world, absolutely, that's what we always want. But what we see happen in legislation far too often is that you have a situation that people have pointed out for a variety of reasons ought to be changed, and then you have people who are trying to effect those changes, and the people who have the vested interest in the way things are currently in the status quo have zero incentive to meet in the middle. It's a gravitational problem. It is never going to get solved if there is not, because if the standard is we have to have peace in the valley, where's the incentive for these people to ever find that peace in the valley? That's where we have to step in sometimes. And particularly, this isn't, just some little, how are we going to stock the coffee break room in these workplaces? This is fundamental safety for workers and, in this particular case, for the communities that surround these workplaces. And this is one of those instances where we have to step in and say it's not okay for you who have the status quo to drag your heels and say, yeah, we'll think about it. We need to encourage everyone to come forward now and begin this process, and this language and the A11 amendment is the way to make it happen. Please vote yes for the A11.
The Secretary will take the roll on the A11 amendment. All members not in the chamber, please come to the chamber to vote. I'll call on Senator Frentz to report the votes of the members voting under Rule 40.7. Senator Frentz.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Senator Carlson votes aye.
Carlson votes aye. Senator Frentz.
Senator Champion votes aye.
Champion votes aye. Senator Frentz.
Senator Dietzick votes aye.
Dietzick votes aye. Just note Senator Champion was in the chamber to vote, I believe. Senator Champion had voted in the chamber. Senator Frentz.
Senator Eakin votes aye.
Eakin votes aye. Senator Frentz.
Senator Fateh votes aye.
Fateh votes aye. Senator Frentz.
Senator Franzen votes aye.
Franzen votes aye. Senator Frentz.
Senator Herr votes aye.
Herr votes aye. Senator Frentz.
Senator Isaacson votes aye.
Isaacson votes aye. Senator Frentz.
Senator Klein votes aye.
Klein votes aye. Senator Frentz.
Senator Latz votes aye.
Latz votes aye. Senator Frentz.
Senator Newton votes aye.
Newton votes aye. Senator Frentz.
Senator Torres Ray votes aye.
Torres Ray votes aye. Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Coleman votes no.
Coleman votes no. Senator Jasinski.
Senator Goggin votes no.
Goggin votes no. Senator Jasinski.
Senator Housley votes no.
Housley votes no. Senator Jasinski.
Senator Kiffmeyer votes no.
Kiffmeyer votes no. Senator Jasinski.
Senator Lang votes no.
Lang votes no. Senator Jasinski.
Senator Johnson votes no.
Johnson votes no. Senator Jasinski.
Senator Limmer votes no.
Limmer votes no. Senator Jasinski.
And thank you, Mr. President. Senator Abler votes no.
Abler votes no. All members having voted who have the desire to vote, the Secretary will close the roll. There being 32 ayes and 34 nays, the motion has not prevailed. The amendment is not adopted. Further discussion on Senate File 9 as amended. Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. President. I offer the A52 amendment.
Senator Pratt offers the A52 amendment. The Secretary will report the amendment.
Senator Pratt moves to amend Senate File Number 9 as follows. Page 32 after line 3, insert. This is the A52 amendment.
To the amendment, Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. President. After we passed the A13 amendment, we were informed by MMB that we needed to make a technical change to the effective date. Mr. President, all this amendment does to the broadband section.
Discussion on the A52 amendment. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. The motion prevails. The amendment is adopted. Further discussion on the bill. The Secretary, Senator Johnson, or Senator Champion.
I can wait until third reading, Mr. President.
The Secretary will give the bill its third reading.
Senate File Number 9, a bill for an act relating to state government establishing a biennial budget for Department of Employment and Economic Development, Department of Labor and Industry, Bureau of Mediation Services, and Workers' Compensation Court of Appeals.
Third reading. Final discussion on the bill. Senator Champion.
Thank you, Mr. President. And let me rise by saying that there are some good things in this bill, and there are some things that are missing that I find challenging. A couple good things is the equity provisions, $34 million for equity provisions for communities of color across the state of Minnesota. I worked hard on wanting to, elevate these communities, and I do appreciate that the bill has the equity provisions in there. A disappointing provision is the fact that we do not have a direct appropriation to Minneapolis and St. Paul for the civil unrest, even though I know that there's $80 million in the bill that can be used for those businesses or businesses affected after March 15th, 2020. Even though there's no specific language, we understand that DEED will have the power to look at that information and make sure that there's some parity also across the state. Essential workers, that is something that I know that another one of my colleagues will talk extensively about because we always want to make sure that workers are safe, employers are creating a safe environment because that just helps their businesses as well. But there are just some things from paid family sick leave to other things that are not there, but we do appreciate what is there. And I know that this is an agreement between the House and Senate, as well as the governor. I also recognize that there are two provisions, one for Rondo, that there's a commitment that that provision is going to be located someplace else in another bill, and that there's a commitment for that provision to continue to go forward. So with that being said, I just wanted to acknowledge that, but also acknowledge that we have a long way to go, because there's so many things that we need to do in order to make sure that we positively protect and invest in the quality of life of all Minnesotans. And so when I say all, I really do mean all. Because if there's one area that we often find ourselves in a challenging position, is usually with traditionally disenfranchised communities and BIPOC communities, because that is something that we sometimes overlook. Not that I overlook it, because I fight for it every single day along with some of my other colleagues that I'm looking at right now as well. But I just want to make sure that our values are reflected in our budgets. So I just want to encourage us to continue to be inclusive, intentional, strategic, and thoughtful. So thank you, Mr. President, for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the communities that I serve.
Senator Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. I want to speak to the jobs bill, jobs being the operative word, and to the workers who are not reflected in the bill that is before us today, and that is the essential frontline workers who took care of us in the early days of the global pandemic, who cared for us, kept us alive, and kept our economy moving. I had distributed an article from NPR from March 25th of 2020, in the very early days of the global pandemic, and underlined a line: Minnesotans must continue to work from home if possible. You know that I am a registered nurse, and I was both fascinated and vigilant about the progress that we were making in the early days of the pandemic, trying to understand the virus, trying to understand its transmission, and trying to understand human behavior in the face of a global threat. I am married to somebody who was one of those people who went to the grocery store and then bleached off all the groceries before they came into the house. We found out later that that didn't really matter, because that wasn't killing the virus in the way that it was being transmitted. I was an early adopter, though resistant, to wearing a mask, because we understood that the virus was being transmitted through the breath that we breathe. Hard to contain that without a mask. I remember an early photograph of Commissioner Jan Malcolm and Vice President Pence early in the pandemic here in Minnesota, and instead of shaking hands, they touched their elbows together, because that was, they believed, a safer way to interact with one another in the early days of the pandemic, because we really didn't understand fully what was happening. We just knew that it was a virus that had the potential to kill people. And now we know that more than 600,000 people have perished as a result of the global pandemic and the coronavirus. While most of us were ordered to stay home, there were essential workers, nurses, people who provide home care, nursing home workers, people who clean our buildings, people who cut meat, people who packed our groceries and supplies. They were ordered to go to work. Educational professionals who took care of our children, so essential workers could go to work. While most of us were ordered to stay home, there were Minnesotans who were ordered to go to work, to take care of us, to keep us alive, and to keep our economy moving. And we owe them more than a debt of gratitude, a banner that calls them heroes, and thanks. Because we are where we are right now because of their work. And over the course of this session and in the other body, there has been legislation moving to take advantage of both federal tax credits and funding from the federal government to make these people whole to make sure that the wages they lost because they had to quarantine themselves to take care of themselves if they were exposed, to take care of their children, or worse, to be home because they were infected. There were many employers who required that those workers who were ordered to go to work, employers who said, you have to use your own time, use your paid time off, use your vacation time. If you don't have it, then you're going to lose your wages. There are Minnesotans who went to work so we could stay home, who used their vacation time and lost wages because they were taking care of us. And they have been before this legislature all year, asked to be made whole, and that fix is not in this bill. And here's why. The Chamber of Commerce, who is standing against the refinery workers because of an employer mandate, are also saying, we stand against the essential workers, and we don't want our employers who have access to a federal tax credit. They already have access to it until September. There's a federal tax credit to make these employees whole, but the Chamber says we don't want employers to have to use it. It's up to them. The Chamber is saying, to these essential workers. Just like the Chamber, hospital executives are doing the very same thing. In fact, they're standing in the way of progress on this bill. Hospital executives. And from my perspective, when you think about the work that we're doing this session in response to COVID, whether it is PPP in the tax bill, or unemployment insurance in the tax bill, or other measures where we are using federal and state dollars to support businesses, business owners, and people who were unemployed during COVID, but we're leaving this group bare, despite the fact that there is federal funding and federal tax cuts ample to resolve that problem, because the hospitals and the Chamber are saying no. That, for me, is a matter of unforgivable character. And we, having the character of Minnesotans representing Minnesotans across the state, should bring our character to bear on this question. And in this body, we have not. This is an issue of character. I thought employers would do the right thing, but they're not without our help. And that provision should be in this bill, and it's not. However, it is a subject of the ongoing negotiations among the governor and the speaker and the majority leader of this body. And despite the objections of the Chamber and hospital executives, who I will say remind Minnesotans every day that Minnesotans should feel safe getting care in their facilities, but will say no to supporting their own employees. That is a reputational issue for our hospitals that they need to rectify. I hope that the majority leader, the governor, and the Speaker of the House are able to overcome the objections of those hospital executives and of the Chamber of Commerce and do right by these essential frontline workers. It should be in this bill. It is not, but it is my job today to make sure that we're raising the issue, to make sure people understand that it is still a subject of the negotiation, and to urge the voices of this body and Minnesotans to push to make sure it gets done. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further discussion. Senator Miller.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to take a moment to thank Senator Pratt, Senator Rarick, Senator Champion, and all the members of the Jobs Committee, as well as the staff, for putting together a really good jobs bill. It ranks right up there with the jobs bill back in 2017. This bill includes a pilot program that I want to highlight. This pilot program will be at Winona State University and Minnesota State College Southeast to train more technical and industrial teachers to provide more students with more opportunities to learn valuable and employable skill sets. So I want to thank Senator Pratt and the rest of the committee for including this very important provision in this bill. I also want to thank Representative Gene Pulowski for his incredible amount of work on this provision in the Minnesota House. And I also want to take a moment, as we're talking about career and technical education, to congratulate Dr. Larry Lundblad from Minnesota State College Southeast on his retirement. He's been at the college for a few years and has done a tremendous job, absolutely amazing job leading the college over the past few years. And he is retiring as we welcome in a new president. And I just wanted to thank Dr. Lundblad for his great leadership and all his support for Minnesota State College Southeast, as well as the Winona and Red Wing communities.
Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also want to get up and thank Senator Pratt and the entire team on the Jobs Committee. There are a lot of things that are very important to my district, District 24, that were fortunately included in this year's bill. One of the things I'd like to highlight is the air grants. This was a pilot project last year that got included and was so successful that we got it again in the bill, not only for this year but next year, 22 and 23, of $1 million per year. This is great money that promotes economic development across Minnesota on some of our smaller and community municipal airports and regional airports. Very successful on creating jobs across Minnesota. Also, the bill for Big Brothers and Big Sisters in Minnesota, Senator Champion and myself worked on this bill. Such a great bill for Minnesota. I want to thank Federated Insurance in my district for being such a strong supporter of the Big Brothers Big Sisters program. This is skills development and mentorship for kids ages 12 to 21, so important to Minnesota. Also this year in the bill that I fought strongly for was the Owatonna Steele County Workforce Center. This was not funded in previous years or had a lapse of funding. It was the only city in Minnesota, over 20,000 people, that did not have a workforce center. Owatonna in my district, District 24, Owatonna, Faribault, Waseca, has a huge number of manufacturing jobs, double the state average for manufacturing jobs, over 30% in manufacturing. Again, so important for my district. The SciTech internship program, $875,000. This gets kids that are in college internships that are working in STEM programs. They're paid internships with small and mid-sized businesses across Minnesota, so important. Also the BDPI funding, which is so important across Minnesota for all our communities. The funding was not quite what I wanted to see. We need to see some more, so hopefully in a bonding bill we'll get some more funding for BDPI, which is so important. But I want to thank again the entire committee, Senator Pratt, Senator Rarick, and all our staff for working on this bill. I think it's a very good bill for Minnesota, so thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Bigham.
Thank you, Mr. President. A couple things. Without the Safe and Skilled Worker Act in here, I'm not going to be supporting the bill. I mean, the process that has happened where 50 people voted on that and it gets stripped out, I voted for it before I voted against it, like I've never seen before. And the process is not fair to the minority, and actually 50% of the majority who supported it. And I am pleased that my requirement for full-time firefighters to be at the refinery provision made it, because I had to go to the Speaker of the House to get it included. So I guess that's how we roll around here, because if it was never accepted or included in the judiciary bill by the chair, of which we're supposed to go through, and what I would have been told to do had I gone to our majority leader. So it's unfortunate, but I'm not going to be supporting the bill without worker safety in it.
Senator Eichhorn.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I just want to say a couple things about the bill today. First of all, I'd like to thank Senator Pratt and all the hard work that went into this bill. I know Senator President Miller puts together a pretty good jobs bill, but I think this one definitely tops that. I might be a little biased because there's a few more provisions for North Central and Northeastern Minnesota in this bill. So I'd like to thank Senator Pratt and his team for the good bill that was put together. Whenever we look at one of these omnibus bills, there's always stuff we don't like, and there's always stuff we can go home about and talk about the good things we did for Minnesotans, and I think there's more good things in this bill for Minnesotans than there are bad things. So a few of those things for the Northeast Entrepreneur Fund, both in my district and your district, Mr. President. Northeast Entrepreneur Fund got $1,148,000 to help secure additional federal funds for small businesses that have been impacted by COVID. Minnesota Diversified Industries that operates in my district in Grand Rapids in Cohasset, operates in Senator Tomasoni's district and Senator Dietzig's district, helping individuals with disabilities. There's $900,000 that's going to go to MDI to help those with disabilities with employment and other additional services. Boys and Girls Clubs of Minnesota is getting $1.5 million. They do great work all throughout the state. I think I probably have one of the highest concentrations of Boys and Girls Clubs in the state. I've got Bemidji, Cass Lake, Deer River, Grand Rapids, Greenway School Districts. They do great work for those students, and I think that's a wonderful opportunity for them to be able to keep doing those great things that they do for our students. I worked with the operating engineers, the 49ers, on a $100,000 appropriation for a virtual academy for career pathways for high school students. We keep talking about how that's so important for those to come back, and we are missing people in some of those trade industries. So instead of just talking about doing something, the 49ers stepped up. They put this program together, and this funding from the state will pay great dividends, I think, in futures for our students. So I'm very thankful to Senator Pratt for that. The Logger Safety Grant Program, this will create a new program that will appropriate $25,000 for matching grants to do logger safety programs. Obviously, with all the loggers we have in northern Minnesota, that's going to be extremely important. Another provision that I'd like to talk about, I know we didn't do a lot of policy because there was a lot of controversial policy, but this is a policy that I worked on in the bill that's not controversial. It arose from a meeting that I had with some constituents in 2020 that were contractors from the Builders Association of Minnesota, and they were concerned about the Contractor Recovery Fund because there had been attempts by both Republican and Democrat administrations to use it for something else, and they wanted to make sure that that fund was protected, so it was only used for its intended purpose. That provision is included in the bill, much as we protected the Douglas Johnson Fund and the IRRR a few years ago. It also increased some funding in the Contractor Recovery Fund and allowed for additional payouts so that consumers who, in the unfortunate event, need this fund will be protected. Another provision that was in this bill that isn't in there now was the provision for the OSB plant that you probably just heard some news about the other day. I'm disappointed that it's not in this bill, but I know we have commitment from Senator Gazelka and Senator Pratt and Senator Bach and Tomasoni to keep working on this. I think there's another avenue for it. These jobs for Cohasset and for northeastern Minnesota, not only for those communities where the plant will be, but for the loggers surrounding all the communities are extremely important, and I'm grateful to support that those senators have given and continue to as we wind down these last few days of session. So with that, I'll close and just say thank you again, Senator Pratt, for putting together a great jobs bill, and I will definitely be voting green and encourage others to do the same.
Senator Nelson.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. I, too, rise in support of this jobs bill. This jobs bill has so many things that our Minnesotans, our fellow Minnesotans need right now. Other members have talked about many of those provisions. I just want to add a few more that are absolutely critical. One is the grants to our Minnesota Initiative Foundations to help with the child care crisis. I know that all of you, just like me, have heard over and over the crisis that we have because moms or dads want to get back to work. They want to be able to go back to work instead of the remote work that happened during the pandemic. But they cannot find childcare, particularly in rural Minnesota. This bill includes grants to help provide, to make that child care available, run through the MIFs, which have done something similar in years past successfully. This is going to help with our worker shortage. We have a worker shortage. We are seeing over and over that businesses are not able to open up fully because they cannot get all the workers that they need. This bill is going to help address that through things like grants for child care. In addition, the Main Street Revitalization Program is key to getting Minnesota's economy up and running full speed. And then there's a couple things that are special and near and dear to my heart because they touch such important issues. I am glad to see the funding for Bridges to Health Care, a program that has worked over and over, helping people get the skills they need to get into those beginning healthcare careers and all of the upward mobility that can follow. I thank Senator Pratt for getting Bridges to Health Care in this bill. And then, members, there is the Father Project. The Father Project touches on a need that we're seeing over and over. That is the large number of children that are growing up without fathers in the homes. That is significant. We cannot underestimate the loss by not having those father figures. The Father Project does a great job. I'm glad to see that's funded. And the same with the Boys and Girls Club. Again, they have done an excellent job, particularly in literacy, in what they are doing in helping kids gain those additional literacy skills while they're at the Boys and Girls Club. So, Senator Pratt, thank you for putting together the type of bill that Minnesota needs. I look forward to a green vote.
Senator McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise, unfortunately, to make some comments about this bill, to express the reasons why I'm not going to be able to support it. After we just saw the 18 flipped votes and no inclusion of the Safety Act, of the Bigham Amendment, that's going to be an easier no for me. But this bill was hard even before that. And the reason that it's really hard for me to see us producing a bill like this is, you know, my colleagues, I gotta say, it's almost as if the global pandemic never happened. It's almost as if we didn't see in the last year the gaping holes and inequities in our economy that resulted in frontline workers being treated grossly unfairly. So I guess it's just back to the status quo. It's just back to business as usual. Is that the way this goes? No paid family and medical leave? No earned sick and safe time? No emergency leave, although we hope maybe something will come out of negotiations at the end? No unemployment for school support staff? I mean, you gotta be kidding me. We just went through a global pandemic where our economy was virtually shut down for months, where people had to stay home for their own safety, but some people were forced to go to work to keep the basic necessities going for all the rest of us. And this is how we answer that call? Status quo, back to normal, get back to work. Trust the bosses? Give me a break. So this is very disappointing to me. While there are good parts of this bill, this is a huge bill, there's some good things in it. And unfortunately, you know, there were some bad things in the bill that we passed, and we've been able to keep those bad things out, so I'm grateful for that. But in order to keep those bad things out, what we had to settle for was a status quo jobs bill, and that is not good enough. It's not good enough for the people of Minnesota. It's not good enough for the workers of Minnesota. We had a charge this session, and it was to rise to the occasion. We did not rise to the occasion. We did not meet the moment. So unfortunately, I cannot in good conscience support this bill. And as I said, it's easier for me to vote no, being from Duluth and having had that close call with the hydrofluoric HF acid at the refinery over in Superior, Wisconsin, that threatened both Superior, Wisconsin and Duluth and the surrounding communities. That we won't even act on a modest safety provision and include that in this bill makes it easier for me to vote no. But I am disappointed, and my apologies to the people of Minnesota that this is all that we could come up with after this session and after all that we've been through as a state. But I thank our friends in labor for their advocacy for workers. I thank them for being here today and for being able to hear their resolve and their pleas for government to act in their best interest and to protect workers and to protect our communities and to take government's place to do its job. So thank you to the people who engaged in these difficult negotiations. I don't envy having to been part of those negotiations to get the worst parts out of this bill and to have to settle for a status quo jobs bill. Thank you.
Senator Rarick.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, there are a lot of things that are not in this bill. Each side had a number of things they wanted to see go in that could not be agreed to. And that's the way divided government works. But I think we did a very good job of focusing on ways to get Minnesota's economy back up and on its feet. And I know Senator Pratt will speak to the grants and loan programs that is kind of the focus of this bill. One provision that all along the way I've forgotten to mention because we passed it here as a standalone, it never made it through, but it did get included, is the chemical dispensing bill known as the Ecolab bill. And that was an example of one where the two sides came together repeatedly to come up with a solution and an agreement. And I think, you know, there's been a lot of talk over the last couple weeks of the refinery safety bill. And that was a very, very hard no vote earlier today, I know, for many of us. But we are here, and I think this Ecolab provision that's in this bill can serve as an example of how all the sides getting together, and sometimes it takes a while to get the sides together, more than 2 or 3 months. But we have to make that commitment, and I'm making that commitment and bringing the sides together, working on that provision, and getting to an agreement like we did with that Ecolab provision. And members, there are a number of provisions that are not in this bill that were mine, that I could have tried to have forced through, that I did not, because there were not agreements. But I believe the bill that is in front of us is worthy of a yes vote from every one of us here. What is not in it is not reason to not vote for it, because the things that are here are good for the state of Minnesota and will be good for getting things up and going again. So thank you, Mr. President, and I urge a green vote.
Final comments from the chief author, Senator Pratt.
Well, thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, members. You know, I was reflecting, and I'm really proud and privileged to be the chairman of the Jobs and Economic Growth Committee at this point in time in history. I can't think of another time in the last 100 years that we've faced what we faced over the last year. And I say that because, you know, we talk about what's not in the bill and what makes us unhappy, but let's think about this. This bill has always been focused on helping this recovery bounce back from the recession and getting Minnesotans back to work. And after making some temporary changes to workers' compensation, to the unemployment system, and $275 million in direct relief to help keep our small businesses from closing their doors forever, this bill puts $150 million, more than $150 million, into economic recovery. I talked about them the other day, but I want to just touch on a few briefly. We created the Minnesota Economic Revitalization Plan, $70 million in grants to small businesses again, and specifically making sure that those that are women, minority, and veteran-owned businesses have a fair shot at these programs. $80 million for larger programs, economic development throughout the state. We have $34 million, as Senator Champion talked about, in a workforce development fund to help people who have lost their job. And some of those jobs are never coming back. Prepared not just to get the jobs of today, but be ready for the careers of tomorrow. We've extended Launch Minnesota, which has been a good program to help foster the entrepreneurial community in this state. And we want people starting their small businesses here in this state. We want to make Minnesota a great place to invest. We have over $8 million this biennium and another $5 million next biennium in child care support. We know one of the biggest barriers to getting back into the workforce is having quality child care so that you know when you drop your child off that they will be loved and cared for and respected. And we're extending for our local communities the covenants on the Job Creation Fund loans and the Minnesota Investment Fund so that those projects that were slowed down by the pandemic will continue. Mr. President, I want to thank again our nonpartisan staff. They have been just absolutely terrific. It's amazing that when you think of an idea at 1 in the morning, they actually respond to you by 1:15 sometimes. And, you know, we in the Senate are extremely lucky to have the team that we have. I want to thank, you know, my committee administrator, Mr. Eilers, and our committee legislative assistant, Mr. Strickland. I couldn't do this job without them. I want to thank Senator Champion. He's been a good partner throughout the session, and I look forward to working with him on the issues that continue to face us, because this bill will not fix everything we have, but it's a good start. It's a really good start. I want to thank Senator Rarick. I couldn't ask for a better partner on the labor policy side. And quite honestly, Mr. Chair, I want to thank Representatives Knorr and Eklund on the other chamber. I mean, this was a hard bill to work through. There were a lot of emotional issues. And at the end of the day, both chambers, both parties came together to put a bill that's good for this state. Because at the end of the day, we're all here to support Minnesota families. We want this to be a great state. And Mr. President, this is a great start at that. I encourage every member to vote yes.
The Minority Leader, Senator Kent.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't believe I've said this session, so I'll be brief. A lot has been said about this bill, and rightly, there are many, many good things for the people of Minnesota in this bill, for jobs and for our recovery as we come out of this pandemic. And I am grateful to the committee members for their hard work, Senator Pratt, Senator Champion, so many staff who make this happen, and for other members who contributed ideas, great work, blood, sweat, and tears to put a bill together. One of the hardest decisions I think that we ever face on this floor is with an omnibus bill that has many good things in it, but has other problems, because it's very hard. We don't have a maybe button. We don't have a kind of button. We have yes or no, and we have to make that fundamental decision. And for me, When it comes to this particular bill and an issue that is most concerning to me, I look at the Minnesota Constitution. Article 1, Section 1, Object of Government. Government is instituted for the security, benefit, and protection of the people. Well, because we are not going to take care of worker safety in this bill. This bill does not address the safety of workers. This bill does not address the safety of the communities that house these refineries and are near these refineries. And in my particular case, it leaves my community vulnerable. We fail on this fundamental measure and our fundamental mission from the Constitution with this bill. And it is a hard decision for me, but I am not able to support this bill for that reason. Thank you, Mr. President.
Before we go to the Majority Leader, Senator Champion forgot to say something earlier on, so Senator Champion, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I apologize for getting up after our fearless leader, Senator Kent, but I just wanted to make sure I mentioned Senator Kent Eakin, who worked really hard on this bill when it left. He supported the bill even when I didn't, and he worked with a number of folks as well. So I wanted to really just make sure that we did appreciate him as well as Shamika Bogan and Craig Janishik. Thanks.
The Majority Leader, Senator Gazelka.
Mr. President, members, this is a good bill. I think this session overall will come down to trying to help the employees and the employers. And it just came to my mind an old quote from Abraham Lincoln. He said that you cannot help the wage earner by pulling down the wage payer. And so what the jobs bill is about is both employees and employers. And before I get too far into it, I think about the work in particular that Senator Pratt and Senator Rarick did, not just working with the Senate members, but also then working with the House members that were very different and had different goals and different directions, and somehow putting together a bill that I think we all could be very proud of. I just say well done. It was particularly good of them. And I do want to call out Senator Bigham just as a clarity. She was the author of House File 1482, the refinery safety bill, that no, it's not in this bill, but it is going to get in another bill. And what I said is accurate, that it was Frankie that contacted me, but processes here, she felt she was following certain processes that did not bring that up to me. So I want to acknowledge that she was the author of that bill. But as we move forward on this bill, members, first of all, the $150 million of resources that Senator Pratt put together and Representative Knorr agreed to is going to provide relief that people have been crying out for, which I think is maybe the key thing of this whole bill, among many, many good things. But some have brought up, what about the worker bonuses? And we have agreed to a worker bonus. I just don't feel I'm quite at liberty to say, but it's well over $200 million that we're going to provide in worker bonuses for many of those folks that have been on the front lines having to work through this pandemic and making our lives a lot better. And so that is something that there is agreement on. I just don't want to steal anybody's thunder on that. And so you just look through all of the bills. Senator Nelson's tax bill, full PPP to help the employers that were struggling and kept their employees and got help from the federal government that we are aligning to. Full COVID unemployment insurance benefits that won't be taxed to help the employees. So this session and this bill is about employees and employers. And I'm just very grateful for the work that everybody's done trying to navigate through some very, very difficult times to have a bill and then across the bills some really good provisions that will help everyone.
Seeing no further discussion, the Secretary will take the roll. Those voting under Rule 40.7, Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Abler votes aye.
Abler votes aye.
Senator Coleman votes aye.
Coleman votes aye.
Senator Goggin votes aye.
Goggin votes aye.
Senator Housley votes aye.
Housley votes aye.
Senator Kiffmeyer votes aye.
Kiffmeyer votes aye.
Senator Lang votes aye.
Lang votes aye.
Senator Johnson votes aye.
Johnson votes aye.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Limmer votes aye.
Limmer votes aye. Senator Frentz.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Carlson votes no.
Carlson votes no.
Senator Dietzick votes no.
Dietzick votes no.
Senator Eakin votes aye.
Eakin votes aye.
Senator Fateh votes no.
Fateh votes no.
Senator Franzen votes no.
Franzen votes no.
Senator Herr votes no.
Herr votes no.
Senator Isaacson votes no.
Isaacson votes no.
Senator Klein votes aye.
Klein votes aye.
Senator Latz votes yes.
Latz votes aye.
Senator Newton votes aye.
Newton votes aye.
And Senator Torres Ray votes no.
Torres Ray votes no. All senators having voted who desire to vote, the secretary will close the roll. There being 45 ayes and 21 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. The next bill on special orders is General Orders Number 3, Senate File 10, Senator Newman.
Mr. President, I want to start out by talking about the transportation bill for this special session by recognizing the staff that has worked so hard on this bill. And I want to emphasize that this is a bill that was a hard, long, difficult slog in order to get it to the finish line. And it involved a lot of compromise and a lot of work by our staff. So first of all, Lexi Stengel, Senate Counsel, Krista Boyd, the fiscal analyst for the Transportation Committee. Without them, I don't know that we could have gotten this done. Our CA, Pat Kalusa, the CLA, Matt Rudrich, and our researcher, Dave Frazier, did yeoman's job on helping us with this bill. I also want to just take just a second, just a moment, to recognize the corresponding staff in the House. As I stated, this was a pretty difficult bill to put together and negotiate, and the staff in the House that worked with us, I really found them very helpful and straightforward in helping resolve issues with our staff. The final person that I want to recognize, and I'm not sure if this is, if you're supposed to do this or not, but I do want to recognize Representative Hornstein. Chairman Hornstein in the House, you know, we are quite different. We see the lens through, you know, very differently. And although our goals are very similar, how we get to where we want to get is often quite different. But I want to emphasize the fact that the negotiations were difficult. There was never a cross word exchanged between us. We were always straightforward, blunt, and honest with each other. And I just want the people in the state of Minnesota to know that we can and do, in fact, work with each other across the aisle. As to the bill itself, first of all, the money coming out of the general fund. Our target ultimately ended up at $221 million in fiscal year 22-23, with $25 million in the tails. Some of the items that we spent that money on would be active transportation, safe roads to schools, a second train to Chicago. We provided for 2 new rail inspectors. There is money in this bill for the local road improvement, a fair amount of money in here for small cities. Those are cities under 5,000 that don't otherwise receive funding out of HUTDF unless we specially fund them. There's money in here for town roads and local bridges. Capital security, given what occurred in the past year, is something that really did come to the forefront, and we provided for the amount requested for capital security and for the state troopers who help out here at the Capitol that are called non-road troopers. I mean, they're all licensed police officers, but they work here at the Capitol, and we provided the funds for those folks out of the general fund. Arterial bus rapid transit received something a little bit more than $57 million in this bill. And I'm going to talk about ABRT a little bit more later in my presentation, but transit is something that is vitally important to the people of the state of Minnesota in the overall transportation package. And we, I believe, did well by providing that sum of money for ABRT. Finally, we spent the tails, the $8 million in our tails, on impermissible spending out of the Trunk Highway Fund. It's what I inarticulately call leakage, and simply comes down to an issue of whether or not money that is constitutionally dedicated to HUTDF, Highway User Tax Distribution Fund, and the Trunk Highway Fund should be spent on certain items that have nothing to do whatsoever with a highway purpose. And I'm going to speak more about this impermissible spending in just a few minutes, but that was part of the general fund money that we spent. In total, there is in trunk highway funds, this would be cash, over $4 billion in fiscal year 22-23, and a like sum almost in the following biennium. This is normal, and I will tell you that the Highway User Tax Distribution Fund is one of those funds that really does collect an enormous amount of money out of auto parts, or I'm sorry, motor vehicle sales tax, gas tax, and license tab fees. It really amounts to an awful lot of money, and again, it's something I'm going to talk about here in just a minute, but keep those numbers in mind. We're talking about billions of dollars that come out of those funds. But in terms of new spending, state road construction, fiscal year 22, there's $208 million in new money, $50 million per year thereafter. We have specific spending that includes county state aid roads, municipal state aid roads, cybersecurity, which is, cybersecurity is kind of an interesting issue that has arisen lately, and obviously is very important, but it's also very expensive. So we do have funding in here as requested by the governor for cybersecurity, and that is something that I think that we have to address on an ongoing basis. We have fully funded the request of the state troopers, and these would be the roads troopers now. That gets paid out of the trunk highway funds. They have received salary increases. We're going to equip them with body cameras. They had requested, I believe it was 44 new or additional troopers to bring them up to a full complement, and we have provided them with that. And then finally, there is certain specific projects that will be funded out of this, and I would direct your attention to the letter that is on your desk that itemizes the various specific projects that MnDOT has agreed to fund. Next, in terms of money, there is trunk highway bonds. And over the next few years, between now and 2025, there is a total of $400 million in trunk highway funds that will be authorized. $200 million of that goes into corridors of commerce, which is a really good method of getting new projects done that are of regional significance and important to the economy of the state of Minnesota. There's $100 million extra money for state road construction. And again, I would direct your attention to the MnDOT letter regarding U.S. Highway 212 in Carver County. There's $100 million in projects, and that 212 project is included in that. And here I would just digress for just a minute. Highway 212 is in the bill itself and is described, and I wanted to just mention it because U.S. Highway 212, I got some information recently from Senator Coleman, and she pointed out to me that the first time they put together one of these highway coalition organizations was 1959. 1959. The people in Carver County have been asking for this road to be fixed for 61 years. And finally, MnDOT has agreed to do it. The death crash ratio at the intersection where Bongards is in Cologne is just about off the charts. There are 1,700 trucks a day that move through that area. And it's just a dangerous, dangerous area in the state to drive. And it took us decades and decades and decades. The way I look at it, this 212 project has been on the 10-year plan for 60 years. And it's really about time that MnDOT finally agreed to fix that road. I'll give you a very quick summary of the of some of the policy items. Each of us have got summaries from our respective caucus. We have got summaries from nonpartisan staff, so I'm not going to go through the bill in depth, but I just want to mention this for the public so that they know some of the things that are in this bill from a policy standpoint. First of all, we're reopening all of the testing stations throughout the state of Minnesota. If you remember, DPS closed. We started with 93. I think we had maybe, I don't know, 30 left or something. They had closed these testing stations all over the state of Minnesota. A tremendous imposition to our citizens who had to drive hours and hours and hours to try and get their driver's license test. We have reopened those stations. We did it on a temporary basis pending a task force that's going to give us some kind of guidance as to what to do with those. We've got a new freight optimization tool that Senator Jasinski carried, and that's just a new tool that is going to make things run more efficiently in the state of Minnesota. School bus cameras. I really think this is a big deal. We are equipping all of our school buses in the state of Minnesota. There's 12,000 buses. We've got enough money in here to put a camera on all of them. And all you have to do is watch the video that the School Bus Association puts out where the 18-wheeler passes a school bus with the lights flashing and the arms out, passes the school bus on the right-hand side of the bus and goes between the bus and the children standing on the roadside waiting to get picked up. There are hundreds of thousands of violations throughout the state of Minnesota every year where people disregard the flashing lights and the stop arms. I think it is a major miracle that none of our children have been killed by people not paying attention to those school buses. So we're going to put cameras on them, and it will enable the police to then track down these people that have run and are guilty of these violations. And I think it's a big deal, and I think it's really going to save the lives of some kids in the future. We have fully funded, as I indicated, the state patrol request. Senator Coleman brought forward a Social Security card online application bill. I think Senator Pratt has probably got a personal story he could tell you about why that is so helpful. Most states in the union already have that. Minnesota is one of the states that did not. We're going to have some self-service kiosks for tab renewals. I think that is just going to be a good program for our various constituents. There is a fix in here for folks who have diabetes. That was Senator Tomassoni's bill. Driver's license reinstatement. That is a Senator Ingebretsen's bill. We've got a pavement guideline or pavement selection guideline that is in the bill. Metro mobility is a forecasted program. Doesn't sound very sexy, but it's important. Metro mobility is a very, very expensive federal program, federal mandate on us. And it's never been line itemed before. And with it now, Met Council has agreed to line item that. It is going to help us in terms of our budget in the future. Two other things I want to mention. First would be the same-day driver's license pilot program. Senator Duckworth brought this forward. We're going to have one in Lakeville, and we're going to put one up in Moorhead. And ultimately, I suspect that this is going to be a very successful, very popular program where people are going to be able to get their driver's license the same day that they apply. And the final thing that I just want to bring to your attention, and I'll mention it a little bit in a minute, is the post-pandemic transportation study. The world has changed and is going to continue to change, and I think that we in the legislature need some guidance on how to handle our transportation system in the future. The last thing that I want to touch on are four of the keystone items in this bill, the four of the items that I really believe are really important. And the first would be an issue that has been hanging around ever since we took care of the MNLARS problem a few years ago. And that involves a situation where we now have MnDrive. That's for our driver's licenses and our license tab fees. Very expensive computer program that we finally put together. And on the heels of putting that very expensive computer program in play, both DPS wants additional staff and additional funding because they feel it is necessary in order to provide the service, while at the same time the deputy registrars have asked for fee increases as much as 100% fee increases on what is charged to us when we go in and get our driver's licenses and our license tab fees. And somehow that just is never made sense to me. I would think that if we're going to spend a whole lot of money on a brand new computer system, we should be saving money someplace, and instead, both sides using it say they need more money and more FTEs. So we have put together a study, and I think this is going to be one of the important studies coming out of this bill. It's going to be a study that is going to be conducted by the same individual who did the MNLARS study for us, who did the expert review, and ultimately was responsible for fixing the MNLARS debacle. And so Mr. King is going to do this study for us. He will have it ready for us by the next legislative session. And at that point, I am very, very hopeful that we will have some kind of input and recommendations to us as to what we do in the legislature with respect to the corresponding claims by DPS for more staff and more appropriations, while at the same time the deputy registrars are asking for the same thing. The next thing, cornerstone in this bill, is project selection. Project selection has been a constant struggle with MnDOT. And MnDOT wants to maintain control over what projects are selected for both maintenance and new projects. While at the same time, the public is requesting transparency. They want to see what's going on within MnDOT, and they want to have some kind of meaningful input as to what projects are going to be selected. I have no doubt that this discussion is going to continue. We will, again, of course, be picking it up next year in the next legislative session. But for the purposes of this bill, I just want you to take a look at the spreadsheet, take a look at the letter from MnDOT, and these are various road projects that MnDOT has agreed to move forward with. And all of these projects are from all across the state of Minnesota. All of these projects are represented by bills that senators and representatives have filed at the request of their communities and their constituents, and it is ultimately reasonable for our constituents to request that MnDOT pay attention to them when it comes to project selection. The third issue, leakage, impermissible spending out of HUTDF and the Trunk Highway Fund. There's over $2 billion a year that goes into those funds, and that's a huge amount of money, constitutionally dedicated for a highway purpose. And it is such a large sum of money. And state agencies, see that. I just have come to believe they can't keep their fingers off of it. And I would estimate that there is between $100 and $200 million a year that is impermissibly spent out of HUTDF and the Trunk Highway Fund. So I think this is really a big deal. And if you look at the list that's on your desk of the various projects that MnDOT is agreeing to fix, to move forward with, just think what that $100 to $200 million would do for us if it remained in the Trunk Highway Fund and in fact was spent for a highway purpose. So in this bill, we took $8 million, that's all we had, that's all we could afford in the current biennium and in the tails, and we took some of those programs that MnDOT and DPS were paying for out of the Trunk Highway Fund, but didn't have anything to do with the highway purpose. And so I just want to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. Now, there is a statute in Minnesota, 160.20 subdivision 3, and it already has a few items in it that statutorily are acknowledged as impermissible spending out of the Trunk Highway Fund. We have now got 13 new ones that we have added to that list. And just pay attention to what they are spending your Trunk Highway funds on. Personnel costs incurred on behalf of the governor's office, the Office of Aeronautics within the Department of Transportation, the Office of Transit and Active Transportation, the Office of Passenger Rail, tourist information centers, parades, events, sponsorships, events, rent for the central office for MnDOT here on the Capitol complex. The DPS has been taking money out of your trunk highway fund for communications, administrative communications and administrative technology. None of these things have anything to do with the highway purpose, and yet they are bleeding this money out of the trunk highway fund, and for every dollar they bleed out of the trunk highway fund, it's a dollar that is not used for the transportation system in the state of Minnesota as mandated by the Constitution. We fixed as many of these as we could with that $8 million, but we've got a long way to go. And we are going to stay at it, but make no mistake, there's a whole lot more being bled out of the trunk highway fund than the $8 million that we just paid for. There is a task force that we have put together, and here again, it's yet another task force, but here I think it's very important because this particular task force is going to look at and review the highway expenditure report that comes out from MnDOT every other year that tells us what they have spent the trunk highway funds on and what they have spent HUTDF's money on. And ultimately, I think that this is going to ultimately be a very, very important report from a task force that's going to give us some specific direction as to what to do with this problem. And I also sincerely believe it will get the attention of MnDOT, DPS, and other state agencies that ought not to have their fingers in the trunk highway fund. The last thing that I want to bring up then, the four corners of this bill, is transit. Transit in the state of Minnesota is vitally important. Make no mistake about that. And it is for that reason that we have put together over $57 million for bus rapid transit. Those are the express buses. And I want you to note that there's no money in here for guideways. Guideways are any kind of transit that operates on a fixed right-of-way. Nobody else can use it, and you can't move the right-of-way. That's light rail, and that is guideways with buses. This is bus rapid transit, and you can move the buses, you can move the routes. So the final piece is the third task force. As we negotiated this bill, we discussed the fact that in our post-pandemic transit world, things are changed. I don't think that in the 21st century our transit is going to look anything like what we thought it was going to look like in the 20th century. There's new business models. People are working from home. Businesses are realizing just how much money they are saving if they don't have to pay for bricks and mortar where people have to go into work every day. People like working from home because it saves them on gas and parking and all manner of benefits. Shopping habits post-pandemic have really changed. Think about all of the goods that are purchased now on the internet as opposed to driving in and going to a store. Our entertainment activities have changed in this post-pandemic world. And I think they've all changed because of COVID. It's just going to be one of the effects of it. So one of the things that we are doing in this bill is requiring a task force to take a look at what should we have in the way of transit in the future, given the changes caused by COVID, and bring us a report and give us an idea what we should be looking at in the future. Mr. President, that is a summary of the bill as quickly as I can do it, and I would be more than happy to stand for any questions that you may have.
Further discussion on Senate File 10. Senator Hoffman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to say I'd like to spend the next, no, I'm not even going to do that. But Mr. President, in all sincerity, Senator Newman has really done a great job in today's climate of looking at transportation from a systems approach, right? And one of the things that I guess I'm really concerned about that isn't in Senator Newman's bill. And I want to talk about what's not in the bill. Well, what's in the bill is great stuff. And the fact that he talked about Bongards, Minnesota, Highway 212, just take a trip down there, and he just laid it out perfect, Mr. President. And so the thing that I'm wondering is last year in bonding, and before that, actually, you look at a 10-year period of bonding, we've had some infrastructure problems. We've had some concerns regarding certain highways in the state of Minnesota. We have, I know up in Moorhead, Senator Eakin, the last 10 years, there's been a conversation about railroad grade separation. Even in our own backyard of Coon Rapids, Ramsey, Blaine, the Highway 10 stretch, there is a railroad line that comes from other parts of North Dakota and Minnesota. There's almost 1 million gallons of crude that runs along that track on a daily basis. And it was at its peak. The thing that really set us apart, and the same thing with Senator Eakin's area, is that we needed to do some railroad grade separations. Railroad grade separations not only for the public safety, but also, Mr. President, to allow a greater flow of traffic. And the thing that was important to us, there was a bipartisan effort in the last 10 years just along the stretch of Highway 10, as I said, all the way through Coon Rapids, Blaine, and Ramsey. And so when you look at that, those railroad crossings touch lots of people's districts. But it's not just about the Senate districts, because when you look at last year's bonding, our area, the regional area, Senate District 35, 36, 37, et cetera, there was $135 million in infrastructure that was placed to absolutely take out the flow of traffic and to look at public safety. And so I have with you, Mr. President, the A4 amendment.
Senator Hoffman offers the A4 amendment. The Secretary will report the amendment.
Senator Hoffman moves to amend Senate File Number 10 as follows. Page 24 after line 25, insert this is the A4 amendment.
To the amendment, Senator Hoffman.
Thank you, Mr. President. And members, in front of you, there are two pieces, actually there are three pieces within this amendment that were dealt with last bonding session. And there was a need for some technical changes. Simple technical changes that shouldn't require 2/3 the majority to vote, because this package, this money package, right? Railroad grade separations in the Moorhead area, in the Ramsey, Anoka, Coon Rapids area, and Blaine area, as well as the flood mitigation in the Henderson area, that stuff was already passed. The Department of Transportation and another agency, and for the life of me, I can't remember what that agency was, a study from the House, the other body, Mr. President, that said, this is great, but we need to have some simple technical changes. And the technical changes that are needed should not have to go through the whole bonding process again. So, logically, Mr. President, it made sense, and it still makes sense today, that that should be attached to Senator Newman's transportation bill. And as I'm talking, Mr. President, I would request a roll call as we look at this amendment. Mr. President?
Roll call will be granted. Senator Hoffman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate that. So, Senator Newman, will you yield for a question?
Senator Newman will yield. Senator Hoffman.
Thank you, Mr. President. And Senator Newman, I know that this was an ongoing conversation that you had in transportation. And don't you agree with me, Senator Newton, Senator Abler, Senator Benson, Senator Eakin, that this makes sense to stay in the transportation bill?
Senator Newman.
Mr. President, without question, this amendment is appropriate within the transportation bill. The three projects that Senator Hoffman is talking about is a rail grade separation project in Moorhead, one up in Anoka, and a flood mitigation project down in Henderson. And we have, in fact, discussed this in the negotiations. I tried as hard as I could to get this fix into the transportation bill, and it was continually turned down. It is my personal belief that these three projects that we fought over and passed last year are now being used as trade bait this year. And I find it really, really upsetting. Our constituents are counting on these projects going forward, and without this technical fix, they're going to be delayed by a year. And, you know, I am very supportive of what Senator Hoffman is trying to do here. I'm very supportive of this amendment. Up in Moorhead, Senator Eakin's district, when the train gets delayed in Moorhead, it blocks off the city. They can't get to the other side of the city with public safety. The cops can't get on the other side of the city. The fire trucks can't get on the other side of the city. And this has to be fixed. In Henderson, if there is a 2-inch rainfall, 3 out of 4 ways into that city are blocked by floods. And they continually are flooded out for months. And the only way in and out of the city is on Highway 19 West, where there are no services, no hospitals, no police, no fire. The only way they can get into that city when it floods is with a helicopter if there's a medical emergency. And these projects are being delayed for absolutely no reason. And I find it really upsetting. I have been told, Senator Hoffman, that the technical fix for the bonding projects, and there's about 30 of them, not just these 3. This affects a whole lot of 40 some. I'm getting hand signals. It affects a lot of people in the state of Minnesota, not just these 3 projects. I am told that standalone bonding fix is coming. And if it doesn't, Senator Hoffman, if it doesn't, when the House transportation bill comes to the Senate, that's when I think we ought to amend the fix on. I think we should give leadership the opportunity to do what has to be done, and that's get us the standalone bill for all of these fixes. So I really do appreciate what you have done, Senator Hoffman, but let's see if we can get all 40-some of them rather than just the 3.
Senator Hoffman.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, good Senator from Glencoe, Silver Lake, Hutchinson. I appreciate your integrity and honesty in looking at that. I'm blown away, Mr. President, that we have been spending years trying to get the Highway 10 fixed. And heck, it goes back to when there was a senator from the Columbia Heights area who was here. I believe his last name was Novak. That was all part of that conversation, Mr. President. And so listening to what Senator Newman is saying, and that we really need to ramp it up because, Mr. President, it is a big deal for this to just be in this transportation language. And so with that, Mr. President, I withdraw my amendment in the hopes that Senator Newman and Senator Dibble will go back to work to get the House to listen to us. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Hoffman withdraws the A4 amendment. Further discussion on Senate File 10? Senator Eichhorn.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I know during the last bill we talked about some of our heroes, and within the last month we lost a couple of our heroes up in Grand Rapids in Itasca County. One of those you probably all heard about, and that was a DNR conservation officer, Sarah Grell. A couple weeks after that, we lost another one of our local heroes, and that was a local EMT. Got into a similar accident that Conservation Officer Grell got into. And that's very unfortunate, and we obviously don't want to see that kind of thing happen. So with that in mind, I have the A3 amendment, Mr. President.
Senator Eichhorn offers the A3 amendment. The Secretary will report the amendment.
Senator Eichhorn moves to amend Senate File 10 as follows: page 120 after line 28 insert. This is the A3 amendment.
To the amendment, Senator Eichhorn.
Thank you, Mr. President. The A3 amendment would direct the Commissioner of Transportation to conduct a study on safety improvement and needs at the intersection of County Road 57 and County Road 336 in Itasca County. The Commissioner would then submit the results of the study and recommendations for improving safety at the intersection to the Itasca County Board of Commissioners and the Itasca County Engineer, and the county would be encouraged to comply with the Commissioner's recommendations. We actually, just a little over an hour ago, actually got some good news that is starting to happen. Mr. President, MnDOT is starting to have some conversations with the county, and they have agreed to do some things that they can do immediately. They're going to increase the signs of some stop signs. They're going to put lighting on top of some of the stop signs, add some rumble strips on the road, just some simple driver alert things that can be done to improve the safety. My intention today, Mr. President, is to withdraw this amendment because they are starting that work, but I would greatly like to encourage MnDOT to continue to work with the county to make sure that not only this intersection is safe, but all of them throughout our state. And I think there's a lot in Senator Newman's bill that goes to do that. I'm very appreciative for a lot of the provisions that are in there that will help counties and small cities to be able to continue to make their roads safe so that we don't lose any more of our heroes. Those were two accidents that the public heard about, but there have been more there. So this is an important step. Again, Mr. President, I do plan to withdraw the amendment, but there may be another individual or two who wants to either make mention to the intersection itself or either of our heroes that were lost.
Discussion on the A3, Senator Tomassoni, followed by Senator Newman. Senator Tomassoni.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Eichhorn, for this. Members, oftentimes these intersections in rural Minnesota go unnoticed, but this particular one is a high-profile, bad intersection because really good drivers got killed in this intersection. And I'm happy that Senator Eichhorn is bringing light to this because our conservation officer Grell and ambulance driver and the people that were involved in the truck that went through the sign. These were horrendous accidents, and they happened one right after another, and it was people weren't even done grieving, and another accident happened, and so people. I want MnDOT and the District 1 to take a very, very hard look at this intersection and figure out how to make it safer for everybody that comes through there every single day. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further discussion on the amendment. Senator Newman.
Mr. President, I appreciate Senator Eichhorn bringing the A3 amendment forward. This is an intersection that I have heard a good deal about, and it is in fact a dangerous intersection. I appreciate the fact very much that Senator Eichhorn is willing to withdraw the A3 amendment, and I would encourage both Senator Tomassoni and Senator Eichhorn to bring a bill to the Transportation Committee next year. This, in my mind, falls within that category of community requests where we have folks who actually live in the area that are telling us that they want us to help them convince MnDOT to fix this dangerous intersection, and I am more than willing to entertain that bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Eichhorn.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Senator Newman, for those words. Yes, Senator Tomassoni and I will be continuing to watch as this progresses and as MnDOT and the counties work together. If we don't see enough progress, we will certainly be back next year with some legislation, and we appreciate Senator Newman's willingness to hear that next year if it gets to that. So we don't want a situation like this to happen ever again where a community is grieving and doesn't finish grieving before they have to grieve again over the loss of another local hero. So with that, Mr. President, thank you for the opportunity, and I will withdraw the A3 amendment.
Senator Eichhorn withdraws the A3 amendment. Further discussion on Senate File 10. Senator Bigham.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to move the A50 amendment.
Senator Bigham offers the A50 amendment. The Secretary will report the amendment.
Senator Bigham moves to amend Senate File Number 10 as follows, page 130 after line 17. Insert, this is the A50 amendment.
To the amendment, Senator Bigham.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Newman and staff did a great job of trying to advocate for this project for me, and actually it's not a project, it's just a clarification of service. We all know about the Great Minnesota Get-Together, and I have the privilege in South Washington County to have 2 shuttle services, Mr. President, that are very efficient, and Cottage Grove Park and Ride has always been used as the primary one, and then once we got the Newport Park and Ride, that was used as an overflow. Well, Met Council keeps reducing the hours there, and I'm very frustrated that every year I have to go back and continue to ask for this. And so all this does is say that they both stay open during the duration of the fair. There is no fiscal note for it. They pay the $5 shuttle fee. They use the same bus. They stop first at Newport, then go to Cottage Grove. If you're going the other direction, they go Cottage Grove, stop at Newport. So there's no additional funding or anything, and would certainly appreciate it. I really appreciate that Senator Newman and I was on the conference committee, and every offer that was done had this in there, and his staff did a great job of advocating for it, and really it's a very just technical small amendment, so I would appreciate a yes vote on this, Mr. President.
Discussion on the A50 amendment. Senator Newman.
Mr. President, the A50 amendment I'm going to have to oppose. I don't think that is going to surprise Senator Bigham a whole lot. And I really do appreciate how hard she has advocated on behalf of her district and her constituents for this particular shuttle service. And but at this point, given the context of our current transportation bill, I really don't want to jeopardize what's coming back from the House. I will promise Senator Bigham that we can certainly revisit this next year, but so that Senator Bigham understands this was included in our offers that went to the House. And when the offers came back, it wasn't included. And Senator Bigham and I have talked about that. The reasons that were given to me by Met Council were twofold. Number one, the Met Council does not wish to embed in statute a bus route. And the Met Council can accomplish this if they were to work with Senator Bigham and put this in place, and they don't need a statute. Senator Bigham feels that she needs the protection because they aren't being real cooperative. And there is some sense to make out of, I don't want to embed a bus route in statute. The other thing that they have told me is that there in fact is a fiscal cost. Senator Bigham believes there is not perhaps we could dig into that a little bit deeper. But those are the three reasons, Mr. President, why I would have to oppose the A50.
Further discussion on the amendment. Senator Bigham.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I appreciate that, Senator Newman, and I'm going to withdraw this in a second, not for you, but for your staff, because I know they worked hard on this with me. Well, maybe Senator Osmick and I can sit down with the Met Council and talk about this next year, because it really is a big deal to my district. And if maybe they don't listen to me, maybe Senator Osmick and I can sit down and talk with them, because Chair Newman and Chair Osmick, I believe, is a chair of a committee, that I am going to be emailing and communicating with you if I get word that they have decreased my service in the district, because this serves all of South Washington County and a little bit of Ramsey. People drive from all over to utilize these two parking rides to go to the Great Minnesota Get Together, and I don't understand their objection to it. And this is one of those death by fiscal note issues that we've had, and for you first termers, get used to it, because it happens a lot, especially with Met Council. So anyway, I look forward to the meeting next year with Senator Osmick, Met Council, and myself. Mr. President, I would withdraw the A50 amendment.
Senator Bigham withdraws the A50 amendment. Any further discussion on Senate File 10? Senator Senjum.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to stand to compliment Senator Newman on a job well done, a hard effort, a lot of balls to juggle, Senator Newman. I know that. But I just also want to call attention on behalf of my community to Highway 14 and County Road 104. A project, a large project, because it's complicated not only with an at-grade intersection but with a railroad, and the fix to all this is about a $40 million fix. Now, Olmsted County has volunteered to step up for $20 million of that. We've got initially $2.5 million from the state and a project development fund. We have 11, I believe, in a bonding fix-it situation, as Senator Hoffman talked about. And then beyond that, so that we share $20 million, there's a gap of 6.3. Now, Senator Newman, I'm just, and I know you have nothing to do with this letter. These are just MnDOT projects. But as I look at this and I think about my Highway 14 104 interchange, which is a killer interchange, I wouldn't even recommend anybody drive through it, quite frankly. And there's a lot of cars that do every day. And it's a dangerous intersection. It's an angled intersection, and way too many people have gotten killed there, including more recently a former county commissioner. So as we look at this, and I look at some of these dates, Senator Newman, I'm looking at 2023, 25, and sometimes it says or later. Senator Newman, I'm just hoping that in a situation where you've got a county willing to go 50-50 with the state government, and also, frankly, even do the project engineering in terms of making the project work. They volunteered to do that as well. That's how much this county wants this thing fixed, because it is a killer interchange. I don't know, Senator Newman, again, you have nothing to do with the MnDOT letter, but I have to say I'm disappointed by the fact that County Road 104, Highway 14 interchange is not part of the menu that they've offered up in terms of interested projects going forward. So I'll stop at that, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Newman, and all for listening. Again, I had to say that on behalf of my community.
Further discussion on the bill, Senator Newman.
Mr. President, first I would respond to Senator Senjum. The projects that are listed on the MnDOT letter, June 19th, they were in no way offered up. They were, I would say, extracted would be a little better way to describe it. As to your particular project, I am aware of it. All of the projects that are on this list are projects where there was a specific bill that was dropped. And if I missed your project, I apologize, Senator Senjum. I didn't mean to. But again, the derivation of all of the projects in the transportation bill are from specific Senate bills. The other thing I would indicate is the dates for completion and starting is somewhat inexact because many of these projects that are listed are in fact locally led, as is the, I believe, the 10414 project. I'm not sure about that, but let's most certainly talk about this project in the future for you. Thank you, Mr. President.
The Secretary will give the bill its third reading.
Senate File Number 10, a bill for an act relating to transportation, establishing a budget for transportation.
Third reading. Final discussion on the bill. Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members. Thank you, Senator Newman, for bringing forward Senate File 10, soon to be House File 10, when we get it from the other chamber. Members and Senator Newman, I did want to say that I will be voting in favor of the bill. It has a lot to be commended in it, and I appreciate all of the hard work that has been done by so many. As you described, as you presented the bill, so much hard work from staff, and certainly so much hard work and so much negotiation between yourself and Chair Hornstein, and I'm grateful for that. At the risk of representing the entire bill, which I hope not to do, I just wanted to, it's just a big bill, there's a lot in it, and there's a lot of good things that I wanted to mention very, very quickly. Certainly the fact that the, excuse me, the base funding for metro mobility and metro transit was not eliminated, was very, very important. Members, I did want to mention, however, that even at base funding, the fact that we haven't been delivering the needed routine increase that's needed for this basic service that people need to get to their lives in the metropolitan area, and frankly, there's general fund support that we need to provide for Greater Minnesota Transit. We are continuing and still deliver a deficit budget, and Metro Transit is facing a fiscal cliff on the order of $80 million in the coming years. So certainly restoring the base is important, but we need to get to the work of making sure we're meeting the basic operational needs of Metro Transit and metro mobility in the metro area. Of course, use of the targets, I think we ended up with a $220 million general fund target in this bill, and using that target, I think, in a very balanced way, addressing local road needs, townships, small cities, an important step forward in all of those areas. I was glad to hear that Senator Newman recognizes transit as so important, and of course that's recognized in the bill, and I commend Representative Hornstein for getting a strong position for arterial bus rapid transit, as well as safe routes to school and active transportation. An important piece that we really need to call out and be sure that the public knows about, because this is an important achievement for equity, is not suspending driver's license for non-public safety related matters, as well as when someone is able in a position to reinstate their driver's license, they don't have to pay that reinstatement fee 2, 3, and 4 times because of multiple reinstatement fee charges that are made. That's called fee stacking, and we eliminate that. Maintaining support for passenger rail, not eliminating the passenger rail office, as well as funding the second train to Chicago. Members, the reason the second train to Chicago is important is not only to provide that mode of transportation that many people will use and prefer, and the business model shows that that will actually support itself. It's a very, very important advance for mobility in the upper Midwest, but it's a big step forward for freight passageway on that corridor, because the track improvements will improve freight in that, and it will also be a big boon to all the cities in between here in Chicago, because a lot of people are going to be going there for various reasons, including for reasons of tourism. The President's city will benefit from a lot more folks coming there, and the tourism dollars and the people visiting and having greater access to his city for those kinds of reasons. So it's an economic development tool. Senator Newman and I do share the concern about inappropriate use of trunk highway funds. I probably don't think it's quite as egregious as Senator Newman would characterize. I think some of the steps we've taken in this bill are advisable, making sure that automobile license plates are paid for within that special revenue fund and not paid for out of the trunk highway fund, and then pocketing the fees that go to pay for that. And some of the other changes were appropriate and good, and I appreciate that those steps have been taken. There continue to be earmarks, as we've talked about in the bill, but they're minimized, and the nature of those, I think, were the product of a lot of conversation and negotiation. They're contained in reference in a memo, except for one from the Commissioner of Commerce, and some of the criteria around project readiness that was established was a good change to make. Capital security improvements, I think, are an important element of this bill. We all have seen what have happened at other state capitals around the country, what happened at our nation's capital, and so making sure we have more people to keep the public safe, our staff safe, ourselves safe. And additionally, those who are sworn officers protecting us here at the Capitol will be using body cameras, so that's a good thing. And addressing the backlog of driving tests, at least in the interim, opening up all the driver testing stations is a good thing, and then getting to work on some of the recommendations that the legislative auditor provided to us to make that whole operation much more streamlined, much more efficient, much more convenient for all of our constituents. Some of the smaller items, my big re-election bill, redefining and making sure we have sound definition for electric assist bicycles. I'm so excited about that. The work zone speedway study that Senator Johnson Stewart worked on, important to keep everyone safe in our work zones is a good add. Senator Newman talked about the school bus stop arm cameras that will improve safety for our kids going to school. Metro mobility forecasting, a nerdy thing, but very, very important for protecting that service for those with disabilities and our seniors in the metro area. North Star Commuter Rail will continue its service. We have a much more holistic approach to maintaining our freeways and our highways and byways throughout the state, as well as taking a look at them from a long-term sustainability perspective. It's regrettable, not a perfect bill, I'm still going to vote for it, but it's regrettable that the bill does not contain any long-term solutions to our funding needs. And we've been trying to do that for many years now, and we will continue to try that, but we really do need a long-term sustainable source of revenue for our transportation system. That's both our roads, our local roads, our bridges, our local bridges, as well as our transit systems in the metro area and throughout the state. We have to do that because these one-at-a-time bills create a sense of volatility that doesn't help with the long-term investments that a transportation system needs, and all of the vendors and construction firms, et cetera, that need to invest in their personnel and their equipment and the like when they're secure in the knowledge that there will be a program of projects that extend out into the forthcoming foreseeable future. And there's no real that also means that there's no real effective plan for a response to making sure that those who really need and rely on transit can have those improvements to the system. That's an equity issue. And we have a tremendous population growth that we're anticipating in Minnesota, and we need a transportation system that's going to respond to that population growth. There's nothing in the bill that really addresses transportation's contribution to climate and pollution. Some of the measures that the House brought forward on that around electric vehicles, making sure that non-polluting vehicles that are deployed through the transit system go to those areas where public health issues are their highest. Those were stripped out and rejected, and that's unfortunate. There's nothing around what we call administrative citations, bringing down the level of offense on our transit systems when people break the law or don't pay their fare to a civil violation, so that more people can actually be cited without being snared up in the criminal justice system in ways that only exacerbate their circumstances, as well as creating a transit ambassadorship where people are on the trains, on the buses, helping those who are trying to use the system for the first time and maybe need some help, or have some other kinds of issues that a transit ambassador can help address, can solve problems before they occur. Mr. President and members, it's a long bill. There's many, many more elements. I think we counted more than 70 or 75 discrete policy elements, and the funding, of course, is extensive and somewhat complicated. Like I said, most of it occurs on a one-time basis, and I wish it were more full of ongoing, sustained, long-term funding. But all in all, on balance, the bill represents a good compromise, and I myself will be voting green. I advise my members to vote however they see fit. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you.
Final discussion on the bill. Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. President. I know you're excited to call on me to continue this conversation. I'll try and make it brief, but I want to ramble a little bit. First of all, thanks to Senator Newman. He did a phenomenal job. He is a great chair to work underneath. I know he had some pretty frustrating times trying to get this bill to the finish line. Many conversations with myself in frustration, but I want to thank him tremendously for sticking with it, getting it to the finish line. I won't go through all the details of how many important things are here, but there's just so many important things that have been done in this bill that will help all of us across the state. It will help Minnesota get on in its economic recovery. There is no doubt about that. So many things, travel and commerce and getting employees to work and all kinds of different things, even though we'll see probably a different transportation system in the future because of what we've seen through COVID. But all things very important. Also want to thank, as Senator Newman did, Chair Hornstein in the House, and especially Representative Elkins, who worked on me with the Min Drive and the Deputy Register's issues, did a phenomenal job. So much respect across the aisle in the other House, working together to get a bill that will benefit all of Minnesota. A couple things that come to mind, working on this bill. Senator Dibble calls them different than we do, but community requests that I think are so important across the state for all of us to feel like we're bringing important stuff in our positions. It's very important. And a couple of those, I'm just going to go through a couple that I heard many, many times that are very important. And I know there's so many, I'm not going to go through them all. But really, Highway 8, Senator Curran's district, we've gotten time to go up there, tour that with Senator Newman and myself and many others, county commissioners, city officials. That's just a great project. Knowing what Highway 14 was to me a couple years ago, going from 2 to 4 lanes, how important that is, and the commerce that crosses those paths is very important. Also, thank you to Senator Newman and staff and everyone else and the House for including my Interstate I-35 County Road 9 realignment study. So important to my community and the whole region down there for manufacturing. Thank you for including that. As Senator Hoffman, who's not here, Senator Hoffman, Newton enabler on the US 10 westbound in Coon Rapids. We know how important that is. We've all, I believe, traveled it. Senator Gazelka's US Highway 10 in Wadena, so important to that community. And Highway 212, Senator Coleman, as we've all discussed, that project is way past due and very important. One thing that we did not get in is the auto parts sales tax going up to 60%, which I thought was a very important thing. We didn't get that this year, but I think it's something we've got to continue to strive for. As you know, we're going to see a gas tax decrease over time because of electric vehicles, so that auto parts sales tax getting more money. I know it's less than, I think, 1% of general fund goes towards transportation, but benefits all of Minnesota. But important things we did get, and I work with Senator Howe on a few things. Small cities, as he said, cities below 5,000 and township roads contribute. There's so many of those roads across in all our districts that are so important. So to get the important funding, we could have used more, but I think what we got was sufficient for this year, but we want to continue more to get more money for those specific small cities and township roads. Corridors of Commerce program, so important to all of us. Getting that money into that program is very, very important. I want to thank Senator Newman and everyone that got that in there. and the leakages, as Senator Newman said, really getting attention to MnDOT of how important that is. So Senator Newman worked so hard on those, and I think got our attention. So in the future, we'll have some great success. One special thing in my district, Waseca City Corporate Caleb L. Erickson will have a dedicated memorial highway. He was a fantastic young man that was killed in service. So such a tribute to him to have that named towards him in Highway 13 in Waseca. The freight optimization bill, as Senator Newman said, is so important for the Minnesota Chamber. It's a great bill that will look at how we locate businesses in Minnesota to alleviate traffic. We'll look at the ports, we'll look at airports, we'll look at highway systems, and where new businesses or business can expand to reduce that traffic so we'd have less congestion. I think it's going to be a very important bill. We've been working on it a couple years and finally got it across the finish line this year. The school bus cameras, as Senator Newman said as well, you've all seen the video, I think. If you haven't, you should. What that will do to get all our buses equipped with cameras. And I just want to put out to make sure that when we do install those cameras, they're effective cameras that will help us see the issues and make sure that we can capture that on video to alleviate of that happening anymore. So I think effective cameras are very important to that system. Fully funding the State Patrol, very important. I want to thank Colonel Langer for all his work that he's done in the past 18 months for us in Minnesota and the State Patrol. They do a phenomenal job. And yes, I'm wrapping up. Last couple things, self-kiosks for our deputy registers. So important to get those things to, as you go into a deputy register's office, those kiosks can alleviate a lot of lines and things like that. We've done a lot of work. I would have liked to get some more work done on the deputy register's fees this year. But as Senator Newman said, I know Rick King is working on that. We'll have a study going into next session so we can look at those fees. I know even DPS and DVS have said how important our deputy registers are to the system and how those license tabs, driver's licenses, and all those things are done. So again, I want to thank, and I just want to say one last thing. It's been a different year with not having Senator Dibble on the conference committee, because it was so normal to having on the committee. So we missed you a little bit. Not that Senator Bigham was not contributable, but it was just different having Senator Dibble not on that committee. So thank you, members. Thank you for letting me babble. It's a great bill, and I encourage a green vote.
Final discussion on the bill, Senator Duckworth.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate it. I just wanted to take a moment and thank Senator Newman for including a few provisions that are critical to my area, specifically road projects that benefit Dakota County, which is seeing a tremendous amount of growth. As you all have probably noticed, traffic has returned to many of our highways and interstates. Highways 3, 55, Cedar Avenue, and I-35, which is a critical artery of commerce, will all see studies or some projects that are very much needed. The same-day driver's license pilot program, which will be initiated in Lakeville, is an exciting program. Hopefully we'll find some success there and it can find its way across the state into a DMV near you. An important one, especially to me, is the creation of the 100 Club license plate, which will benefit first responders and their families. I think now more than ever, us understanding the importance of our first responders and finding ways to give back to them and their families for their service in any way possible is extremely important. And last but not least, I do want to specifically thank Senators Newman, Howe, and Jasinski for their steadfast support of the Minnesota State Patrol. I know this bill includes pay increases, body cameras, and 42 new troopers. And sometimes I think we lose sight of just how important and critical of a resource and asset this organization, these men and women, are to the state of Minnesota. I can speak from the capacity as a volunteer firefighter who responds to calls and works with our troopers on a regular basis, as well as a member of the Minnesota Army National Guard who over the last couple of summers has had the ability to work hand in hand with such phenomenal, professional, and knowledgeable law enforcement folks in the state. And so thank you for showing them the support that they deserve. The organization over the last couple of years has experienced a tremendous amount of stress in terms of their personnel, their resources, and the assets that they've had to contribute across the state. So thank them for their service, and thank you, gentlemen, for making sure that they're supported in this bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Final discussion on the bill. Senator Pratt.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. And I just want to take a moment to thank Senator Newman for including a project that really is not only important for Scott County, but very important for the entire state, and that's $2.5 million for the Highway 169 where it intersects with Highway 282 and County Road 9. This project's in Jordan. This is the last stoplight on 169, and I looked at the map all the way from Senator Abler's district through 12 Senate districts all the way down to Senator Francis' district in St. Peter. This is the last stoplight. Why is this so important? Well, it's an important public safety issue. Making this a true interchange on what is effectively a freeway is going to have tremendous impact on the public safety in Scott County. But also, this is an extremely important corridor of commerce in our state. 50% of our agricultural product at some point in time runs on Highway 169. We have over 100,000 jobs within a 5-mile radius of Highway 169. But getting back to the agricultural product, that agricultural product, a lot of it is going up to Scott County and the ports of Savage that then gets distributed across the world. 169 is just not an important project for Scott County. It's an important project for the state and our farmers and all of our small businesses. And I want to thank Senator Newman for recognizing the importance of this project and including it in the bill. Thank you.
Final discussion on the bill. Senator Newman. Senator Tomassoni.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I heard 169 mentioned so many times today that I have to chime in here and thank Senator Newman for the money to do a study to finally finish the Cross Iron Range Express, a highway that was supposed to be a 4-lane highway all the way from Virginia to Grand Rapids, about 60 miles, that was supposed to be finished in 1967. And there's still 8 miles left to go. It's the most dangerous 8 miles in the entire highway, and every single year we have fatalities there and bad crashes. And so I want to thank Senator Newman for including $500,000 to do a study on how to finish this particular highway. It's a corridor of commerce, and it needs to be done, and it needs to be done now.
Senator Osmek.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will Senator Tomassoni yield for a question?
He will yield. Senator Osmek.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Tomassoni, are you looking for a name for that section of road that you're doing the study on? Because I have a very good name for the stretch of road you're going to be studying.
Depends whose
Senator
name,
Tomassoni.
depends whose name you're putting on there.
Final discussion on the bill. Senator Newman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wish to thank Senator Dibble for his support and for his words. I look forward to next year. We'll take up the torch again and move forward as best we can. But my appreciation to Senator Dibble and to all of the members that have stood up and talked about their various projects. I really hope that MnDOT is listening, because what I am hearing is a good deal of support by members who are bringing to the table requests from their various communities for projects to get done. So I really do hope that MnDOT is listening to us. Transportation is really an interesting arena. It's not just roads and bridges. Minnesota is a seaport. So we have the ports. We have Duluth, we have Mississippi River, and it is literally worldwide shipping that comes out of Minnesota, and that is transportation. Rail, both passenger and freight, is very active in the state of Minnesota and very important to the state of Minnesota. Aeronautics and airplanes and airports, extremely important both from an economic standpoint and from the standpoint of allowing our citizens to move around the state. So I just want to emphasize that transportation is multimodal. There are all kinds of things that participate and are involved in transportation. It is vital that the state of Minnesota have a good, sound, modern transportation system. It is good for our economy. It is good for our public safety, and it is good for our people in general. And people in the state of Minnesota, whether you drive or not, you benefit from an avid transportation system. Thank you, Mr. President.
Final discussion on the bill, Senator Gazelka. Senator Newman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Momentary confusion. Mr. President, I would at this time move to table Senate File 10.
Senator Newman moves to lay Senate File 10 on the table. All those in favor say aye. Opposed say no. Motion prevails. Remaining under motions and resolutions. Senator Gazelka, you ready for this one?
I was doing work. Mr. President, before I go, Senator Marty came to me and said, you know that quote you gave about Abraham Lincoln, that's not an Abraham Lincoln quote. So you never know when you Google stuff what you're going to find, right? I remembered it in my brain, but it's attributed to William J.H., I hope it's Boetker or something like that. But back in 1967, they clarified that it was this gentleman in 1916. So, Senator Marty, truth is important. Thank you. So,
back to business.
Time for business. Mr. President, I move that House File number 8 be taken from the table and given a second reading.
On that motion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. The motion prevails. The Secretary will give House File 8 its second reading.
House File number 8.
Second reading. Senator Gazelka.
Mr. President, I move that an urgency be declared within the meaning of Article 4, Section 19 of the Constitution of Minnesota with respect to House File number 8, and that the rules of the Senate be so far suspended as to give House File number 8 its third reading and place it on final passage.
Members, just a reminder that a motion to suspend the rules takes a 2/3 majority or 45 votes to prevail. On the Gazelka motion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. The motion prevails. Discussion on House File 8, Senator Westrom.
Mr. President, members, this is the Agriculture Rural Development Bill that we debated and laid on the table last Thursday. This is the House file that came to us from the House. We don't need to debate it again. It had strong support in the House when it left. I urge your support.
The Secretary will give the bill its third reading.
House File number 8, a bill for an act relating to agriculture, establishing a budget for the Department of Agriculture.
Third reading. Senator Westrom, I think you may have just got yourself a few more votes. Final discussion on the bill. Senator Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. Grateful participant on the Ag Committee this year. This bill is much stronger than when it left us, and it deserves your vote. Thank you very much.
Final discussion on House File 8. Seeing none, the Secretary will take the roll. Any members not in the chamber, please come to the chamber to vote. I'll call on Senator Jasinski to report the votes of the members voting under Rule 40.7. Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Abler votes aye.
Abler votes aye. Senator Jasinski.
Senator Coleman votes aye.
Coleman votes aye. Senator Jasinski.
Senator Goggin votes aye.
Goggin votes aye. Senator Jasinski.
Senator Housley votes aye.
Housley votes aye. Senator Jasinski.
Senator Kiffmeyer votes aye.
Kiffmeyer votes aye. Senator Jasinski.
Senator Lang votes aye.
Lang votes aye. Senator Jasinski.
Senator Johnson votes aye.
Johnson votes aye. Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Rarick votes aye.
Rarick votes aye. Senator Friends.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Carlson votes aye.
Carlson votes aye. Senator Friends.
Senator Champion votes aye.
Champion votes aye. Senator Friends.
Senator Diedzik votes aye.
Diedzik votes aye. Senator Friends.
Senator Eakin votes aye.
Eakin votes aye. Senator Friends.
Senator Fateh votes aye.
Fateh votes aye. Senator Friends.
Senator Franzen votes aye.
Franzen votes aye. Senator Friends.
Senator Herr votes aye.
Herr votes aye. Senator Friends.
Senator Isaacson votes aye.
Isaacson votes aye. Senator Friends.
Senator Latz votes aye.
Latz votes aye. Senator Friends.
Senator Newton votes aye.
Newton votes aye. Senator Friends.
And Senator Torres Ray votes aye.
Torres Ray votes aye. Senator Friends.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Klein votes aye.
Klein votes aye. All members having voted who have the desire to vote, the Secretary will close the roll. There being 63 ayes and 3 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. Remaining under motions and resolutions, Senator Gazelka.
Mr. President, we're going to move for a recess to the call of the President. I do believe that Finance will be reviewing some of the bills. I know that we have Commerce and Energy coming, and then maybe Environment too. We also acknowledge that there will be time necessary for both sides to caucus those bills, so we could go into the night. It kind of depends if we get all the language we need for the remaining things on the environment bill. By all into the night, I'm thinking, 8 o'clock, not midnight or something like that.
Before we recess to the call of the President, announcements, Senator Rosen.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Senate Finance Committee will meet in room 123 here in the Capitol in about 30 minutes. Thank you.
Any other announcements? Seeing none, Senator Gazelka renews his motion that the Senate recess to the call of the President. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Motion prevails. The Senate is in recess.